So welcome to domain 2, which is risk assessment. So as always, I'll quickly teaser on how much percentage of questions that you can expect, but this is just FYI, right? You can expect 28%, which is the highest of all the 4 that we have in the exam. And this is 20%, which approximately is 42 questions out of 150 is what you can expect. So this is a very, very important domain, not that the others are not. But question standpoint, you can expect more questions from this particular domain, right? Let's quickly go on to the content. What are the objectives of this domain? Is to identify and apply risk assessment techniques, right? We talked about risk identification. Now, for a brief period, we'll talk about risk assessment techniques and how our inputs that we receive in the risk assessment identification phase, okay, will help us, probably understand the magnitude of risk in the assessment phase. Analyze risk scenarios, right? We did a risk scenario exercise as part of our risk identification cycle. We're going to analyze that inputs that we've got from the auditees, SMEs, and platform specific people, or whoever is the auditee for risk assessment. Analyze those risk scenarios to understand what are the so what do you analyze from a risk scenario from a input standpoint? So that can be a question, right? Big question. So what is that you will analyze as a risk practitioner in the risk scenarios, probably responded risk scenarios, which you can make use of in the risk assessment phase? What are the specific attributes that you can use in the risk assessment phase? Anybody? So we just discussed about risk scenarios, right? The question is very simple. We discussed about risk scenarios. Imagine that you've completed that as part of phase 1. You've got responses. How will you use that feedback? You've got some feedback from the respective person or the team who is being audited or assessed. You've got the feedback for those specific risk scenarios. How would you analyze those risk scenarios, and what intel would you use so that you can use that as input for your risk assessment? So in essence, at a generic level, what you have to put it risk terminologies, you will analyze the current controls that are there, correct? You will understand how the process works today, right, in terms of delivering its value by virtue of the responses that you get from those scenarios. So that will give you a very good picture of that risk that is there. Would that fall into the high bracket or the medium bracket or your low bracket? Okay. Just for the sake of discussion, I'm only restricting it to these 3. You might have your own category and labeling of risks in your organization. But just for the sake of easy discussion, I'm only limiting it to 3 discrete labels here, right? So those are the high-level risk scenario inputs that you will use for your risk assessment phase. Like I said, your controls, right? Current state of controls. You actually have the answer right there. Like you can analyze those, feedback, and you can understand what are the current processes that are there, what are the current problems that are there, and which you can use it in your risk assessment phase. Like you can talk about problem PIT. We talked about PIT, right? Risk is PIT, probability of impact and threat, right? So that those things, inputs for each of those factors, you can get it from your scenario feedback. So that's why you have one pointer there which talks about risk scenarios. And the third point is a subset of that. There are risk scenarios to help you to identify the current state of controls as well, right? We talked about in detail in the earlier slides, where risk scenarios you will expect the process owners to detail on how they react to a particular risk situation. So for that, they'll obviously explain the controls that are put in place today, right? Assess gaps between current and desired state of the IT risk environment. Okay, so here the one more learning objective is you will also understand how you will do a gap analysis. So that is again part of the objective for this domain. There is something called as a gap analysis, where you will have a current state. You would want to go to a desired state, like a maturity assessment, and then you will come up with an action plan, which is an outcome of a gap assessment, where you will say, I'll have to do these 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, with whom there are different stakeholders tagged to for each step, and with the ETA, and how soon they can, and how soon that step will get completed. And by the end of the entire plan completion, the expectation is that you will go to the desired state. So all those specifics will be discussed here in this particular domain. And then communicate IT risk assessment results. So once you complete it, once you complete your identification, and once you complete your assessment phase as well, how do you communicate them back to your relevant stakeholders, which is obviously your risk reporting, right? Your risk assessment report. What are the components of your risk assessment report? All that will be discussed, and that's the objective of the domain. That's a quick overview of this domain. Okay, we're just in the second domain now, so this is just to give you a highlight where we are. Yeah. So this is exactly what Isha was the one who nailed it down earlier. So this is exactly what we discussed. That's my first question, right? Difference between identification and assessment. If you look at it, that's pretty much what she said earlier. It's exactly what the same differences. So that identification will talk about nailing, listing down the risks 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's it, right? And where assessment talks about the PIT values, PIT, probability, impact, and threat, and hence you're saying whether it is going to be high risk or medium risk or low risk depending upon the controls, existing controls, probability, impact, and threat values. Okay, documentation of assets and their values is done in the identification phase, whereas assessing critical functions and defining controls in place will be part of your risk assessment. Defining controls that should be in place. That's a key word there. Defining, which is to be controls. Yeah, hell a lot of techniques that are there that are given in the courseware, but I will be discussing very few topics because based on our experiences, are key techniques which will catch where you will get questions from. Right. Having said that, it is good to read through from the review manual about the other techniques as well. It's not in detail, in greater depth, that is the other techniques are discussed. You will probably have a 3-liner or a 4-liner about all of the other techniques that are there. It is good to know about it, but based on my experience with ISACA, there is not much of a questioning around the rest of the other techniques. But having said that, we're not excluding it part of the scope. Still recommend you guys to go back and learn these techniques from the review manual, the soft copy of the manual that is provided. So make sure you identify the key differentiators between these techniques. So what we're going to discuss here is we'll discuss 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we'll discuss 4 of those primary techniques under this particular topic, right? But the others are fairly dependent on this particular 4 techniques, or are probably minor variations of these are the other 4. So I would encourage you to go back, and if there are questions around any particular process, we can probably take it offline, because this to me is a very low priority effort. That should not take us more time, so that we can prioritize topics which are of much importance for us to clear the exam. So that's where the intent is, right? So if you see, I'll quickly jump on to the first technique of risk assessment, which is on bow tie analysis. Okay. If you look at the diagram, it looks like a bow tie, right? So that's where it gets its name from. So you have the causes, you have the entire risk in the center of the bow tie, right? Which is your knot, if I'm not wrong. And that has the data corruption as a label there. So data corruption is the risk or possible hazard that is being discussed. So here you have causes on what are the possible threats or events that could lead for a possible data corruption technique. And then you have the prevention or the proactive control measures that are there. You have malicious insider, right? Accidental compromise, malicious external user who can corrupt your data. Okay, this is just a indicative bow tie results that I've took it up from the internet. So if you see control measure wise, for external users to corrupt your data, they have to pass through firewalls, they have to pass through anti-malware solutions and other controls, right? You can also add IPS, you can also add, let's say, for example, UTM, you can add other inline controls, okay? Like for accidental compromise, it is somebody who has got access and they have exposed it to the internet. Malicious insider is purposely doing the corrupting the data. So for which we'll have obviously no control, because insiders are the biggest threat today, and there are no technical controls in the market that at least I know of which can prevent insider attacks. The insider attacks is like an inherent risk that is there, because this is people specific threat, right? And you will never know who's the insider in your organization unless you do, unless there's an incident and you do a root cause analysis to find out who actually did it, and then you terminate that person. That's all reactive controls, but proactively you will not be able to identify a insider or a person who can fiddle around with permissions in an appropriate way. So you then talk about recovery measures, which is your mitigation or reactive. That is where this comes from. So data, if it's corrupted, what are your recovery measures? You can restore data from data backup, right? If your primary source is corrupted, then you can look at and then see the last restored data and then recover from that so that your damages are minimal. And consequences, what are the consequences? This is loss of customer confidence, loss of vital information, right? That could be a impact or consequence. So bow tie analysis is one such construct, or I would say, where you will put all of these scenarios, which we discussed in domain one, you can put them in this particular technique and identify the controls that are there, the preventive controls, the mitigation controls or the reactive controls, right? Proactive and reactive. That's how I want to look at it instead of saying mitigation. So proactive controls and reactive controls. And then you'll also have the consequences on the right hand side and the causes for each of those risks, right? You will list it down and then you will do an analysis there, right? And then for wherever you see that there are no controls, in this case for insider, like I said, there could be no other controls which is there. But for example, for the accidental compromise which is there, we can talk about email monitoring. We can have a data leakage prevention. That could be one of your prevention controls that could be in here in this particular window. If I'm thinking of it, right? If somebody accidentally attaches, let's say, a source code file in their email, instead of the client email they accidentally sent it to their own personal email address, for example, right? Then you can capture it in your data loss prevention controls, and that will kind of quarantine that email or block it before it reaches the email gateway. So that could be one such preventive control. And you can have your recovery measures for data corruption. You can have your logging as one of your controls where it detects problems, right? Recovery, from a recovery standpoint, you'll only have data backup, which I can't think of anything else for data corruption in terms of recovery, corrective controls. In terms of detective, you can name a lot of things. In terms of availability, you can put other controls like RAID controls. You can have very ancient backup. You can have RAID and other kinds of controls in place. So that's basically what's a about analysis is. This is one such example on how you should be going about for every of those risks that are out there. Okay. So this is a decision tree analysis, right? So this is basically used to risk assess and to take a decision wherever necessary. Right. For example, software development as an example, how do you want to go about? You can either outsource or get it from as a cost product from the market, or you can have your developers create a application for you, right? So that's the cost that you see there in-house, and then you have a probability of impact. What is the if there's a 40% probability of the risk that goes down, right? So you then branch out all those options into sub branches, and then you put specific use cases for all those sub branches, and then see what is the impact. Right. So if you see here in this case, after development, the overall risk for the outsourced is 2,98,000. Okay, 2,98,000. Where in the in-house after development, you see it as 292,000. So that's the difference that you see in those cases, which helps you to finalize to a particular decision that you should go about having a in-house capability, because the larger risk from a risk standpoint is 292 is much lesser than 298. Hence, you should still go about with the option of taking up the in-house software development model as opposed to the outsource, because the initial cost is much lesser in the outsource environment. But if you look at the probability and risks that are there, if the vendor kind of exposes the data, then the risk is high there, right? You'll have to be dependent upon the vendor for updates and other design related issues if there's something. But if it's in-house, everything is under your control, right? So all those is giving you a better perspective of risks. You'll be able to make that decision, and you'll be able to have a better control of things if that application is developed in-house. So you can use similar decision tree analysis and put those values there in your risk assessment phase. Right? These are just high-level examples on how decision trees could be used. I think in the review manual there are other techniques such as FT, fault tree analysis, your decision tree analysis. Fault tree analysis is another is on similar lines, which is being used. Fault tree analysis. What can go wrong that will come at the top of the chain, and then the sub process to it will be branching out of it. Then you will then understand how certain things can go wrong, and you'll be able to analyze the impact and probability of each of those ways in which it can go wrong. Right? So decision tree and something your fault tree analysis are pretty much the same things, right? Interchangeably. So you have your FMEA, failure mode effective analysis, which is also discussed in the review manual. If you see all of that, all of those are derivatives of the PTA of the FTA models. I'll take a really complete the other two techniques. One is BIA. Okay, BIA is a very common tool for your BCM framework, which is your business contingency management or continuity management framework, where you do a BIA to understand your availability requirement. That's a form of a risk assessment because it clearly tells you what is going to be your RPO requirements, right, and dependencies for each process. It helps you to understand the single point of failure. It clearly articulates the different scenarios that are there, which are considered, which should be considered, so that your BCP plan or your disaster recovery plan can be created going forward. So business BIA is your first step in gathering the requirements for your availability or your BCM or DR setup for your organization. Right. So BIA in itself is a risk assessment technique where you will get onto an interview mode, discuss about the availability specific threats only, and you will come up based on the discussions and feedback received. You will come up with an RPO value. RPO is something which is called the recovery time objective, and RPO is called as the recovery point objective, where RTO basically tells you how long can your infrastructure be down without actually creating a business impact, right? For example, let's say I have a critical application. How long can I have that application down before I start seeing an impact to my business? For example, Amazon. So if you see Amazon as an example, their Amazon app, right, the mobile app today, that is much more used than their URL or the web URL that is being used than the which is less used than the app in itself. So from a priority standpoint, obviously the mobile app will take more precedence than the web application. So if you ask Amazon how long can they sustain if the app crashes down, I am sure they'll say the impact is going to be very huge and the RTO is going to be very, very thin. By thin, I mean it's going to be in a matter of minutes before which the app should fail secure or fail safe, and it should prompt the user to relaunch the app by when the app should start functioning normally. So that way, the requirement is very, very thin there because it's very, very critical for Amazon to function and be in business, right? And RPO is the kind of data that you will need for you to continue the operations. So the kind of data requirements is what the recovery point objective is all about. So that talks about from the time of crash, how soon do you need the data? Let's say if my RPO is 2 minutes and I have a data breach, let's say at 4 p.m. local time, and if I say my RPO is 2 minutes, I will need data that has been backed up until 3:58 p.m. Okay, and then I'm okay to lose the data for the last 2 minutes, but anything before that, I will need to have that data backed up and restored within the RTO timelines. That's what my RPO talks about. So all these are specific details pertaining specifically to BIA, okay, which is more of a business continuity specific topic. But the reason why we're discussing this here because BIA in itself is a type of risk assessment technique, right?